Active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine. And we're going to have a country that you can be proud of, not a laughing stock all over the world for many years. You know, in 1913, they traded to the income tax system. We used to be all tariff, and we had no...
When I talk about Donald Trump's tariffs, or what I often call the most ridiculous trade war in history, I usually point out that we don't really know what his true intentions are. Is he using them as fake leverage he doesn't actually have? Is he claiming they'll bring back manufacturing jobs, even though those jobs didn't return during his first term? But what we do know now is that Trump realizes he's losing. That's why he's backing down to China. So much for the art of the deal. His strategy seems to be bluff, go all in, then fold before the showdown, because he's too afraid to see it through. And when Carolyn Leavitt was confronted with that reality, on Fox News of all places, she completely unraveled just like her boss has. We'll break it all down, but before we dive into her Fox News appearance, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like on this video. And if you're enjoying the content and haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button. It really helps and means a lot. Now, let's first take a look at what Trump said this morning that led to Leavitt being put on the spot about his tariff policies.
Active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine. And we're going to have a country that you can be proud of, not a laughing stock all over the world for many years. You know, in 1913, they traded to the income tax system. We used to be all tariff, and we had no income tax, and we had the wealthiest country we ever had proportionately from about 1870 to 1913. It was all tariffs, and we had more money than anybody. They had committees how to spend the money. They had so much money they didn't know how to spend. Then some brilliant person said, let's go income tax, let's let the people pay. Now, we're going to be able to substantially lower taxes when this is finished.
Even though I call it a plan, and I use that term loosely, Donald Trump's approach to tariffs shifts from day to day. We're still in the dark about what's really going on with this trade war. But one thing remains clear. Trump doesn't actually understand what a tariff is, nor does he grasp the historical context or the economic damage tariffs have caused and are once again causing. You don't need to be a historian to see that tariffs don't work. Just look around at what's happening now. That said, it seems Trump has opened his eyes just enough to notice the warning signs. Tanking markets, chaos in the bond markets, and growing pressure from businesses. That's what pushed him to announce that initial 90-day delay. But now, as prices climb and both small and large businesses warn him that shelves could be empty and costs could skyrocket if he keeps this up, he's caved to China. Neera Tanden nailed this point, and I want to show you what she said before we jump into Carolyn Leavitt's segment.
We hear a lot of complaints about it, but I totally agree that we should do a lot more as an administration to support families. And one way to do that is childcare. Another way to do that is paid leave. And I think it's unfortunate that, conservatives, Republicans have voted against those very ideas in Congress. The child tax credit was opposed by every Republican, including Mike Waller.
But you as a Democrat also strongly...
You did vote against... You voted against a reconciliation bill that had actual child care in it. You did, and the child tax credit.
When did I vote against that?
You voted against it way back in 2022.
I wasn't elected until 22,
well,
so I didn't come to Congress until 23, but thank you. So you apologize for lying?
I'm not lying. Every Republican voted.
I didn't vote on the bill. And I have supported the child tax credit. I have co-sponsored legislation to that effect. I've also co-sponsored and led on legislation with respect to IVF access, codifying IVF access into law. Okay, so I've actually led on these issues, and as the father of two young daughters, a 5-month-old
nobody's mentioned paid family leave.
It's in the state legislature. I supported it.
I'm so glad that Neera Tanden pointed out this false narrative being pushed by conservatives that Joe Biden loves tariffs just as much as Donald Trump does and employed them in the same exact way when it's clearly not the case. But also, Donald Trump isn't employing tariffs either. He's oscillating between 0 and 160, and the 160% tariffs he's leaving are the ones that are the most damaging, which is why he has decided to pull back after getting nothing from China, even though Carolyn Leavitt might want to argue the opposite for some reason.
Right, Caroline, we're watching markets. They seem to be so sensitive to everything that comes out of the White House right now, whether or not, the Federal Reserve Chair will keep his job, whether or not the president's softening his stance on tariffs, most recently saying that, talking about the Chinese imports, they're very high, the tariffs on imports very high, and it won't be that high, won't be anywhere near that high, said the president. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. Is it fair to say, Caroline, that the president's stance on tariffs with China is softening?
I don't think that's fair to say. In fact, I spoke to the president about it this morning. He is not going to give up on ensuring that there are fair trade practices around the world. He is not giving up on the fact that China has been ripping off the United States of America for far too long.
She is contradicting her boss, which has been the thing that has been most shocking to me through this entire saga. That MAGA, which is always lying in their messaging, usually is at least telling the same lie, but they're not doing that. Here, Donald Trump has publicly said, ceding any sort of leverage that he had, that the tariffs on China will eventually go to zero. And he didn't say they'll go to zero because China wants to make a deal. He just said they're going to go to zero because he knows they have to. And so Carolyn Leavitt disagreeing with Fox, confronting her over Trump being soft on China in this stance, which he is, and which is what Naritanen said in that clip we just checked out, is spotting. I hate to give Fox credit. So I'll just say that they're right, and Carolyn Leavitt is unrightfully freaking out. This messaging makes no sense. Pete Buttigieg was just talking about it and how Trump is not going to bring back manufacturing right here.
I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. People think South Bend, they know Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
The big employer that propelled South Bend wasn't Notre Dame, it was Studebaker. Studebaker made cars. It was before the big three, it was the big four. And we were one of them. It dominated our city, grew our city. And then in 1963, they shut down. That's 20 years before I was born, and we were still dealing with it 20 years later. We were still dealing with it 50 years later when I became the mayor there at the age of 29. And what had happened was, when we were going to school, I would go in between just acres of collapsing factories that literally looked like a war zone. I have been to war zones that look very similar to the way a lot of places in the industrial Midwest, like where I grew up, looked because of some of these things you're talking about. Right. Which is why I think there's an appeal to saying, we're going to bring back manufacturing, right? And by the way, again, I don't want to move away from what I was saying that we shouldn't go back to where we were, because I think a lot needs to change. But I would point out that in our entire lifetime, the year when there was the most investment in factories in the United States, the most factories being built, was last year. Because there were a lot of policies, the chip stuff, the manufacturing stuff, trying to get more of the green economy stuff to be built on U.S. soil, that led to a lot of these factories. Now, a lot of them are still in construction as we speak. Some of them actually opened, some of them still haven't. But right now, in Kokomo, Indiana, I just read a story today about 370 workers at Stellantis who just got laid off. Auto workers who got laid off because of the tariffs. So this is a tool that you can use for sure. But it's absolutely critically important that you know what you're doing when you do. And if you're just making shit up as you go along, or if you're doing it for a reason that's actually less about helping middle America and more about consolidating power, which is what I think is actually happening. We can get into that. Then it's not going to.
There is no through line in this administration. There's no theory on the case of tariffs that makes any sense or resembles, some cogent message. Which again is the thing that they're usually on top of. They're lying in their message, but at least they're delivering the same one. But that's not the case anymore. This administration was supposed to be about lowering prices, but it's done the complete opposite. And what's Donald Trump doing with his time now? Well, he'll go ahead and tell you.
Putting up a beautiful, almost 100-foot tall American flag on this side and another one on the other side, 2 flags, top of the line. And they've needed flagpoles for 200 years. It was something I've often said, they don't have a flagpole per se. So we're putting one right where you saw us, and we're putting another one on the other side on top of the mounds. It's going to be 2 beautiful poles.
Mr. President on China? President Trump on China?
Paid for by Trump.
Mr. President.
Why is the president of the United States focused on decorating what this has gone beyond stupidity at this point? But listen to what Carolyn Leavitt had to say in defense.
Budget.
I'm sorry?
Can you talk about the motivation behind, as well as the significance of the president's move to install massive American flags?
Oh, the flags. I thought you were referring to the flags be lowered in honor of Pope Francis. Yeah, look, I mean, the president is a real estate developer at heart, and he's always looking for ways to improve the White House complex, not for him, but for future generations, for future presidents. He has some fun ideas for this complex, which we've kept you all apprised of as they have happened and will continue to do. So you can expect to look up, I think, quite soon and see a very big, beautiful American flag, perhaps on the north lawn and the south lawn. I think it has yet to be decided. So we'll see you all later. Thanks, Carolyn.
He's a real estate developer, okay? Can he be the president while he's the president? It's just, I don't know. MAGA will probably find a way to defend this and say, you know, we're bringing patriotism back, whatever that means. Conservatives sure do like to talk about how things look rather than how they are, and how things actually are is pretty terrible. I don't know how patriotic and American it is for us to be ruining America's standing in the world. I don't know how loving it is of our country to defy the Supreme Court and the Constitution, but sure, go for it. This is the most incompetent administration in history, and it is again increasingly shocking to me that every decision they make, they then contradict. There is usually some through line. I know I've repeated this, but it is still so baffling that, although it is a lie, it is the same lie that is no longer the case. There is such division and such chaos within Donald Trump's White House. One they said was going to be run differently this time, and now it is just confusion. And I know that to some people may seem just like, oh, DC gossip, the inner working, who cares? But that's not actually the case. Conservatives so often pass off Donald Trump and the chaos around him as, oh, his mean tweets, the liberals. They get so angry about the mean tweets. But Donald Trump's chaos has destabilized America to the point that it is impacting our economy. When you are a country that does not follow its own laws, that cannot keep an idea or policy straight for more than 24 hours, why would any other country, let alone businesses, domestically want to invest? They don't. So the guy who you said you would accept a little bit of chaos for because it'd bring about a great economy is actually giving you chaos, destroying an economy. He is already screwing up. And I think that's an important message that we're going to continue to talk about on the show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments.